I want to share how I've been learning new things with room research. This is a snapshot of what I'm currently doing in October 2021. I hope that 1 year from now, this is going to be wildly different, not for the sake of change, but simply because I believe learning should be an iterative process, your approach to learning. So, first things first, I have this template in Rome where I start thinking about why I'm learning what I'm learning. So just about the learning project. So I ask myself, what am I trying to accomplish? Why is this important and valuable? Is this concrete, measurable, or subjective, ambiguous? How will I know this is complete? Any risks or hazards? And if there is anything else noteworthy. These questions I'm taking from work cycles. I think they apply really well for longer term projects as well. If you want, you can take a look at my video on work cycles in Rome. But specifically, I'm learning Clojure now, which is a programming language. And my goal with it is basically, I believe it can unlock my capabilities as a programmer and allow me to build more ambitious projects with less code and more clarity. There's some other stuff related to it. I also got into why I should build what I want to build with it. So I believe learning is better when we have a learning project. And if you want to dive deeper into this idea, there is a link to David Perel's posts that I'm gonna link below this video. But yeah, so I focus on building a specific project. In this case, I'm gonna do a data-heavy, flexible, and exploration-oriented content platform, which is very broad. And then below, how will I know this is complete is where I actually do the strict scoping. So I know this is gonna be complete, this learning project, and specifically, I'm gonna be able to say I know Clojure, even if not true. I'm not an expert, but I know it. When I've built a prototype from scratch that allows you to define a content model through an UI and then edit it with the ability to reference between entities. I won't build a full product. I work for a content platform company and I love their product. I don't want to, I don't think I can do anything better and it would take years. So yeah, that's not the goal. It's just a prototype. I just want to test Clojure in the environment I'm most familiar with, which is CMSs and some other like very technical requirements. Then risks and hazards, I feel like that's a very dense topic. There is a lot of computer science and mathematics surrounding it. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of overwhelming moments. And I just want to focus on enjoying the process. So this initial part I think is very important because it gives you clarity on why you're learning what you're learning and allows you to think more deeply about your process to tackling this learning, right? So if I know I'm building a prototype, I know for a specific subset of what Clojure could do, I can orient my learning towards that and say, skip over macros probably, which is a very complex topic inside of this programming language that I don't think I necessarily need. And of course, it is something that potentially could improve my output and my understanding and my capabilities with it. But this is a restricted learning project. I'm putting myself about a month worth of dedication to it. So let's not go overboard. So yeah, after you start thinking about your learning project is where you're gonna actually be doing the learning, right? So the way I've been tackling this is through daily notes and specific queries or specific tags, attributes, and links that allow me to surface what I want later. So let's take yesterday as an example. Okay, so I finally decided to learn Clojure. And then this is just like after reading a lot about it, I decided, okay, let's do it. So I started going through the quick start guide for Clojure, And then I hit the first roadblock, which was installation. I used Windows, that was really hard. So I then moved into just following a course on exercise.org, which runs your Clojure program in the cloud. You don't have to manually set up your environment. And that allows me to move further. And then I am taking note of their basic concepts first, which is a lesson they have. And then I started taking notes of those. That made me realize, okay, I now have a concept, which is a concept of a namespace that I want to start exploring. So in the context of this lesson, I learned that you start every file by defining a namespace, which you're gonna later use that to reference it in your code execution. But a question that arises was, does the namespace need to be defined in every file? I'm not sure. So I put the question attribute that is basically a link, which I can then surface in this query. So this is basically saying, get every question related to Clojure that is not yet answered. So this is going to surface that specific question here. And I can trace back where this question was raised. And this allows me to track my understanding over time. So let's go back to concepts. So namespace, I went to concepts here and created a new block named namespace, which I'm going to use across my notes on Clojure. And I can then use it inline as I'm seeing here. So you start every file by defining a namespace. This is a link. And then I can track everything related to namespace. And as I'm doing it, those very pragmatic asserts and just general pieces of information that I know I'm gonna need later, I'm starting to add them to this index of concepts, right? So for example, we are talking about naming structures or naming approaches, which, let's see, this came from putting it all together. So after I did all the basic concepts, I tried from my mind putting it all together in a single Clojure program that I could understand myself. And then as I was doing it, I realized, wait, I don't know how I should be naming functions. So I checked, should I be doing it what we call kebab case, like checked, learned, or not? So I put this as a question, and then later in a separate context, which was here, this starts getting complex even to explain, but it makes sense for me. So again, this is learning for yourself. Make sure you adapt it to what makes sense to you. But in this case, I realized that taking a look at other code samples, I should, yes, be doing a kebab case. So separate my variables and namespaces with dashes. So this is a concept that I got in the end and realized, okay, I should just move that over to my concepts. So now my idea is that over time, I'm going to have this list of concepts that I can refer to as a means to quickly get back to those. I'm also, as I already have experience with other programming languages, specifically JavaScript, I'm paying attention to what I love or hate about Clojure. So I have these attributes I love, which again are links, and I can use those to query everything that is Clojure and I love, right? So this brings me to how comments are first party in functions and how it's becoming clearer and clearer how Clojure is dense and straight to the point and productive. And then I can eventually take these I loves and use them to contrast with my existing experience, and through a relationship get a better understanding of what really clicks in Clojure, specifically in this case, but with any learning that you have, and why is this relevant or why is it not. If you don't have enough I loves, maybe that's just a symbol that you should not care about that thing and move on. Same things for tasks, questions, answer, tricks, notes, what have you. tricks is like I found something really nice as I was going through a code base of Clojure, and okay, I realized I should probably use this thing for documentation endeavors. Answers is the opposite of questions, so it's the questions we answered. One example is what is the naming pattern. I've just put answered here as a tag, and then I can refer back to this later, which is similar to concepts. The difference between concepts and answers, as I'm tackling it, is that concepts is more curated of like a manual index that I built, and then answers is just like maybe it's not something that is as important to go into concepts, but I can track what I've answered. A good example of that, let's take a look at questions, would be this one. What happens when, in the context of data log, which is a querying language, again, I don't want to get into the technical stuff, but what happens when you can't find an entry for a given value and try to use which is a very like edge case sort of situation that I don't really want to turn this into a concept when I learn it. It's not even truly a concept. So this one, whenever I answer it, which is not now, I don't have the answer yet. I don't want to have that over here. I want this to be as dense as possible. And finally, notes is like whatever I'm writing that is not contextual. I want to do daily notes based learning because I can track and trace back in which context a given piece of information came. So say later I discovered that no, you shouldn't be naming your variables separated by dashes. Then I can trace back where did I get this wrong notion, or maybe I got a really interesting idea that I want to share. I can trace back and attribute the author of that idea or whatever that came from, which is a really nice way of just connecting with people and paying forward, right? But anyways, notes is like, I found this link. What makes a good REPL? I have not read it yet, but I do want to dive deeper. I could either put that in notes and put them here, or I could do, for example, a to-do. Let's just copy this one. What makes a good REPL, and then Clojure. And then that would show up in tasks here, which is another query. Personally, for these sort of info I would like potentially to read, I don't want to treat those as tasks. So for now, I'm treating tasks as a more action-oriented sort of to-dos, truly, which these aren't to-dos. So I could, for example, come in here in my notes and like thinking through architecture. And then I'm going to do a to-do of like set up a Git pod environment with line or something like that, which again, very technical. And then this is going to come up into tasks. But this note of thinking through architecture, I don't want that to be in my daily notes because it's not tangled with other context that is really important. It's just taking things off my mind, right? Okay, so how do we tie this together? I'm gonna walk you through my process of taking notes as I'm learning something new. So I have this exercism lesson on Clojure lists, which I'm going to copy its link. I'm gonna do Clojure lists exercism lesson. And I'm going to link to the Clojure page, which is going to allow me to query everything under it. So again, if I have a question, how do lists work? I can go into Clojure here, and this question is going to be here now. And again, this is in context. So this question was spurred from this lesson. What I'm going to do now is to just read through it and take notes of what I'm learning and start porting that over to Rome. Okay, so right away I'm noticing I have not understood like 80% of what they're saying here. It feels very computer sciencey, and that's a challenge for me. So what I'm gonna do, well, first I took note of that. Okay, I didn't get most of it. This is just a way of talking to myself and helping get through it. But I'm also going to get my hands in it and trying to actually exercise. So that's where just general practice really comes into play. With programming, that's really big benefit because we can actually try it out very quickly. And you can see here, I can, if I run tests here, none is going to pass. So they would expect this, but we didn't get it. So it's very tailored to your learning experience, which is really nice. Okay, so I finally discovered one of the issues, and now I realized I don't understand the potentially very core and basic building block of Clojure, which is whether or not you should wrap the return of your function in parentheses. So I'm gonna write that as a question because it's very relevant for me now. And as I started diving deeper into my question surrounding these return statements, I realized there are some other levels to it. So I started working through it, like what does this mean? And then I realized I what is the difference between list and short quote parentheses. And then they say in their lesson very broadly, which I could not understand, quoting a list using quote or its shorthand indicates that the list should not be evaluated. Then that made me realize what does it mean to be evaluated. So you can see this later when I do see this evaluated question, I can trace back to its origin and potentially fix a very core, bedrock, foundational understanding of Clojure in this way. So I'm trying to keep track of everything I'm facing. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing I have the concept of a list that I'm going to use very often. So I'm going to do list, a new block inside of concept. I'm going to paste that into my new concept of adding items. I'm going to try to reproduce a code sample by hand, and then I'm going to drag this new assertion over to the concepts. And finally, I'm also going to link this list concept over again. So you can imagine that later on I'm going to use the list to I love, for example. So I don't know, comparing JavaScript arrays with Clojure lists. And then not necessarily everything that I link to list is going to be included here, which is the case of this one. So returning plain lists from functions doesn't require you to wrap them in parentheses. This one, I don't feel like it's a strong concept to come in here because it's related more to how functions work. So that I'm going to tackle eventually. But that, as I'm processing through it, just made me realize I should probably have a function statement or a block here and then link to it here. Okay. And I'm imagining there's more stuff coming this way. All right, and then as I'm using this, I could eventually do queries, like questions I have surrounding lists. So anything that include this block and question. And now I know we have like 3 questions surrounding lists. So this is a way of like tracking exactly where your understanding is lacking in a given concept. Okay, so I managed to go over everything, and now I think I have a little bit more understanding, although there is definitely a lot of room to more understanding. So as you can see here in my questions now, I think we went from like 6 to 13. So I'm tracking a lot of new gaps. And this just really helps even if I don't come back to actually answer these questions. Just the process of reflecting on them is really important. So just to recap what we've gone through. So just to recap what we've gone through, we are doing a template that first nudges you to think about what you're learning, then index what are the most important concepts, reflect on what you like or what you don't like, add some tasks for your learning project if you have any, track your questions, and as you answer them, what have you answered in the past, tricks or interesting stuff you want to share later, and also taking some notes. They are less tied to specific context of daily notes. The vast majority of your notes, though, will come from specific blocks in your daily notes, like these questions here. And then this allows you to track your learning and where a specific understanding or concept or question comes from, in what context, which really helps you create a stronger and more trackable graph of knowledge, which is really where Roam excels. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna try to put this template in YouTube in the description. So also feel free to comment and let me know what you think. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.